So in our last video we spoke about whether hitchhiking is a safe way of travel, and I concluded from my experience that it definitely is. The stereotype of someone out there wanting to hurt you is very, very low. It is still a risk, but you shouldn't worry about it too much when you're starting to hitchhike. There are a lot of really good people out there. But in this video, I'm going to tell you the most common things that can go wrong when you start hitchhiking, and include what I think are the biggest risks to this way of travel. It is a safe way of travel, but you should still be cautious and just don't do anything stupid. So in this video, I'm going to point out some of the things that I would be careful of when starting out hitchhiking. So what are the biggest risks to hitchhiking? What is the greatest risk to your life? Well, I don't think it's people, but it's simply the dangers of being on or near the road. So there's two parts to that really. One is being involved in a car accident. When you look at all the figures in the world of car accidents and deaths on the road, it's quite high. It's like quite a big cause of death or injury. And being in someone's car and being in a car accident really isn't something you have too much control over. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. But there's a second part to it, which is being hurt or injured while walking on the road. And this, you can definitely manage this risk a lot more. And it's a big risk. Often people don't think about it, but when you're walking on the road, you're oftentimes maybe on a road that cars don't expect you to be on. There are some bad drivers out there. They may run into you, or you just may be in a bad spot and just be the wrong place at the wrong time. But I'd say, particularly to manage this risk, just make sure you cross roads safely. It may sound really obvious, but I've over the course of hitchhiking in my life, I've gone times like nearly run over, stuff like that. So you may think you know how to be safe on the road, but it really is the biggest risk. So make sure you cross roads safely, you look both ways, make sure that if you're on a spot you shouldn't be, that you're aware of your environment, you make sure you know when there's a red light, where cars are going, and when you're waiting for someone to pick you up, make sure your arm isn't too far on the road. Okay, that's the biggest safety risks, but there are still a lot of things that can go wrong when you hitchhike. And one of them, I think, is a language barrier. People often ask me, Kieran, how do you go about dealing with a language barrier when you're traveling to different countries? Because it may be true that a lot of people know English and can speak a bit of English, but there are often times when they're just, even if you know one or two languages, you'll be in a country where they only know one language. And what do you do about that? Well, of course, you can use translator apps, you can have a data plan and an internet connection. But what I advise is, sometimes in rural areas, you may not have an internet connection. So definitely use a translator app where you can download the language beforehand. This is in case there's no signal and you can still communicate with the people that are taking you. Of course, it's not the best idea if you're having a text-based translator app and they're driving, but if you just want essential communication, then definitely download the language, the main language of the country you're in. But of course, ideally, have an internet connection when you go, so that you can. Voice translation is pretty bad a lot of the times, but sometimes it's good. So having an internet connection definitely helps. You may oftentimes be somewhere without signals, so having a translator app offline is really helpful, and I find it very useful, especially when I'm in rural areas in the middle of nowhere. So another thing that I hear a lot of backpackers that want to try hitchhiking worry about is the risk of getting lost or stranded, or being somewhere and not having a place to stay. So let's break it down a little bit. Of course, it's not good to be lost when you're traveling, but easy fix to that is just having offline maps wherever you go and having a GPS connection with that as well. It's so important knowing exactly where you are at any given moment on your adventures, for researching an area, for knowing where they could drop you off in case they make a turn to what you're not expecting. Then you can ask them and they can tell you, oh, we're going this way because I'm dropping something off, or I'm taking a shortcut, or whatever. It's very, very important to have a map with you wherever you go. And my favorite app for offline maps is mappy.cz. It's this Czech app, and you can download specific regions or whole countries even. It's really, really useful. It has loads of physical geography, outdoor features like hiking routes. It has bus stops automatically featured. It has so many really cool features that Google Maps, Yandex, all the other maps, and I've tried loads of maps, they just really can't compete with the features it has. Of course, I use Google Maps as well. I definitely recommend having Google Maps because you can use some of the features without internet as well. But definitely download Mappy. It's really helped me on my ventures, and I love being able to download maps offline for specific regions. That's really helpful. And yeah, really useful because you can use maps for deciding where you want to be dropped off. It avoids potentially them dropping you off in a really bad location. That's something that can really go wrong oftentimes when you're starting out hitchhiking. They they just drop you off at a location that isn't very good. If you know the area, then the more experience you have hitchhiking, the more knowledge you have on the best places, the best hitchhiking spots where you can continue your adventure. The second part of that is not having a place to stay, and on my adventures I love carrying a sleeping bag with me. It gives me the flexibility I need when I'm traveling. If you are someone that on your adventure is just going to hostels and stuff like that, just making sure you're somewhere where then you can book a hostel or a cheap place of accommodation. But I really recommend taking a sleeping bag and having a bivy bag with you. A bivy bag is like a waterproof cover for the sleeping bag, and it's so useful on hitchhiking adventures, because you then don't worry about where you're staying. You're very flexible and you have a lot of freedom on places you can stay. You can camp, you can with permission sleep in the buildings. It offers so much flexibility, and by having a sleeping bag you can just sleep in lots of interesting places that no one really chooses to sleep. And the seventh thing that could go wrong on your hitchhiking adventure: losing things in people's cars. This is the most common thing that goes wrong on my hitchhiking adventures. I don't know how many times I've lost things on my adventures. I've lost hitchhiking signs, I've lost high-vis jackets, hats, gloves, jumpers, water bottle. I think that's it. Oh, power bank, like power chargers for your phone, and cables for your phone as well. They are really commonly lost on my adventures. So ways to mitigate this really is, when you exit the vehicle, make sure you have everything with you. Always check. If you take off items of clothing, just make sure they're near you, so that you don't forget about them when you leave. You don't leave them on the floor of the car. You won't forget your backpack, but ideally put as many things as you can in your backpack before you set off with them. But I know when you get picked up, it's like a quick frantic dash to put your backpack in, head off, and of course ask where they're going, but then not delay them too much. So yeah, the most commonly lost items are cables and chargers for phones. Try not to leave things in your pocket, because sometimes it's slid out when I'm in the car. If you have a coat, make sure you put things in your pockets so you always know where they are. Hats and gloves, yeah, put them in the pockets of a coat. And yeah, you are going to lose something at some point, so don't worry too much. Hopefully it shouldn't be too expensive to replace, but it's really frustrating for me when you're hitchhiking, you're traveling on a budget, and then you just keep losing things. You keep losing things or things break, but that can be something for another video. So those are 7 things that could go wrong on your hitchhiking adventure. I touched on the biggest risks, and hopefully with this video you can be more prepared for your adventure if you want to start hitchhiking. And if you want to start hitchhiking but you're not sure how, maybe you're a little bit worried, and you don't know where to start, then my channel really should help you. So give a thumbs up for more hitchhiking content, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.